I see dead people.
Hot shit.
Here's Johnny.
Stop.
We have such sights to show you.
Bring the motherfucking ruckus. Fuck you too.
All I was gonna say is that I'm still thinking about that story we read about the clown that sort of appears out of a cloud of smoke and teabags you. I think that's just one of the best images that you can throw in the story.
I've been
that has
re-listening
nothing to do with the Revolutionary War relic that it came out of. It's so good.
No, that episode made me laugh so fucking much. I think it was the Happy Halloween Danny episode. All the Danny stories. We just literally opened up the compendium and found anything he had sent us. I don't know if Danny listens to the show anymore. I hope he fucking does, because that episode is just a love letter to one of our most outspoken fans. That episode was so fucking funny. I remember sitting here, I was like, I don't know, I was doing something mundane. I was like doing laundry, you know, I was sitting here, I was cleaning or something, and I'm listening to it, and it was the type of thing where, like, I never wanted to step, like, more than 5 feet away from my laptop because I was worried I was gonna miss something really fucking funny. And it was the type of thing where, like, I literally just sat there with bated breath, like, waiting for the next, like, stupid fucking thing that came out of our mouths.
I wanted to shake his hands, Danny, personally.
Well, Danny didn't write the stories. He just sent us the stories.
Curating, right? And he curated.
He curated that episode. That's fair. That's fair.
Have you played Elden Ring at all?
I know of it. I haven't played it, but that you're free to go off on whatever tangent.
I've been playing recently like a randomizer run where you download a mod and it just randomizes all of the bosses and enemies.
Yeah.
And I think also, like, already the game is just sort of insane, and there's all of these sort of like beasts that are like, here's a big guy with a shrimp head, and he's actually a demon.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make, you know,
right.
there are lore videos, but who's gonna watch them? Not me. But in the like, reading that video or reading that story just reminded me of what I'm doing currently, where you just like, you walk into a room in a castle and like, oh, there's a big egg that's attacking you. That's the same, like,
yeah,
that's the amount of non sequitur a clown teabagging you for no reason. And then, like, the story
in the middle of like an empty museum at night, you know.
Yeah, no, it's so good, so good.
The steam encroaches from the hallway, and henceforth jumps a clown, knocking you onto your back.
I mean, I guess they must have had, you know, clownish people in the Revolutionary War, Civil War. You know, they had to have some sort of like rudimentary USO going on with like vaudeville acts.
I'm pulling up your playlist right now.
But...
I want to reference what episode we're talking about. I want to give a shout out to the last time that you were here. I've been re-listening to the show because every once in a while when I haven't recorded for a bit, I like to get back into the same wavelength. And when I'm recording like group things, sometimes they're earlier chapters or earlier experiences around each other inform the next time. Like it's not like a direct continuation, but it might as well be, because I'm having the same people come back for it. And that's, you know, that's just an allusion to something that's coming up that the audience doesn't know about yet. But I went back and I re-listened to a bunch of shit, and I re-listened to, I believe, our first episode so far.
Is this my third time on, or my fourth?
This is, believe it or not, your 6th episode.
That's not true.
It is. I'm looking at your playlist right now.
It is my 6th episode?
It is your 6th episode.
Dude, my brain is fried. That's bad.
Let me check. So, first episode, the one I definitely listened to, is Bible Camp.
Right.
Which
sure.
we absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is called Guess Who, which I believe I listened to as well. I'm trying to find... Where's the story breakdown behind the track? That was the Jesse Mack episode. Yeah, this is the one where we read a bunch of names. Jesse Mack, Mr. Smile, Mr. Grabs, Betsy the Doll,
Okay,
Heather's Faces, Allison's Loss. Yeah, just another short episode compilation. And then we did the 2-part of the showers, which I'm actually coming up on now that I remember. I'm a couple episodes away from the showers.
Oh boy, man, I gotta like start writing shit down.
No, you don't. You don't. I do.
I have to remember my own life, man. I have to figure this out. What do you mean?
Well, your first episode, behind the track. Your first episode with me, I know time fucking flies when you're having fun, but your first episode with me was in June of 2020.
Oh, I mean,
so it makes sense that you don't like remember it.
Yeah, you know, we'll call it COVID.
167 was Bible Camp. 186 was Guess Who. 219 was Showers Part 1. 221 was Showers Part 2, and then 265 was Happy Halloween, Danny.
Right. Well, Jesus Christ. Glad I asked.
This is I don't remember the number for this. I stopped counting and including it on episodes because I was more often wrong than I was right.
I like that.
To the audience, you were just here, like, I don't know, 12 weeks ago if they've been listening concurrently, but it hasn't been that. We did Danny back before Halloween. I want to say sometime in, like, September of last year. Yeah, some other time. But it's funny. It's always funny to see, like, how many episodes do you think have been on? Maybe 3 or 4. 6.
Yeah, no, I lost, just losing chunks of time.
I recently had a buddy who was absolutely certain that he had only done like 7. And when he showed up to the group exercise that we did, and I told him it was his 10th, he vehemently did not believe me. And I was just like, no, it's your 10th. You've been doing this shit with me for a while.
Oh no, that's the thing. I definitely believe you. Because I just don't trust.
Oh no, that's the difference. Sure, you blame yourself. That's okay. You're allowed to.
I definitely. You have a record, and I'm just like sort of looking inward and trying to conjure something up. One of those is a lot more reliable.
It's easy when you have like a website like an iTunes that keeps track of it for you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the thing about this entire product is I don't think it gets old. I just think it all congeals together after a certain amount of time. And I have a friend who has been re-listening to the show, and I had him on it because he expressed interest. But he's been re-listening to the show, and he'll just like tell me, he'll just be like, oh, I really liked that one. And like at first mention, I'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. 'Cause it could be anywhere from, I want to say this started in like late 2016, like ouch to admit that out loud. But you know, it's weird because he'll give me the smallest detail and I'll be like, oh yeah, that one. And then I'll retell the entire story like in like a short, you know, 2-second, little paraphrase. And he'll be like, yeah, that one. It's like, oh, it all comes back to me, you know, after the recollection is deep into my mind, past the stoner tendencies.
That's impressive. I can't even blame it on the drugs anymore because I stopped smoking a while ago, so I don't even know I don't know what it is. Just my brain is sort of a fluid.
It was easier when that was the crutch, and I would be like, yeah, I don't know, but I also recently kind of stopped smoking, and it's just because it doesn't make me feel good anymore. It's like I just feel like
That's a
shit
good
all the
reason.
time now.
That's probably a
Um,
pretty good reason.
Getting older just means everything hurts.
Yo, so did you? Okay, we don't have to get into this like while recording, but I also had a basically very similar thing where like I noticed my physical pain got worse when I smoked, and everyone else is like, "What? What do you mean? It's supposed to help your pain?" And I was like, "This is not. That's not
No,
what it's doing. It's doing the opposite."
it's doing the opposite. Somewhere around the last 2 or so years, it's been very slow, very gradual. Um, Weed just stopped doing it for me, and I went from someone who smoked every day to someone who doesn't smoke at all. Um, it wasn't pain, it was anxiety. It stopped
Oh yeah.
it stopped doing the THC like body high where you feel like warm and blanketed and you want to take a nap, and it started
Mm-hmm.
giving me the like tippy top of my head like brain high where I think like, I don't know, someone's like trying to break into my house at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Just not fun. Just
Mm-hmm.
not fun anymore. And maybe it's a reflection of my psyche or a reflection of the person I'm growing to be, and I'm just riddled with anxiety, bubbling beneath the surface of my soft exterior, but I can't I'd like to think I'm not actually all that anxious. I think that weed just made me hypersensitive, hyper aware, and I don't like that feeling anymore.
Sure. No, I totally get it. I totally understand. That's how I felt when I first started, and then for a while it went away, and now like you described. But then again, in the past few years, it's like almost every time when I'm high, I'm like, I feel like I need to crawl out of my skin right now.
Yeah,
And then I think, oh, I did this to myself voluntarily. Maybe I should cut that shit out.
right. There was a point in time where like only certain strains did that to me,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
like I mostly stuck to indies because I felt like indies almost always guaranteed like a body high. And then I found like the opposite thing was happening, and I was like, well, I can't go back to like hybrids or to the other side of the spectrum because I don't ever think that they were the answer. Like indies were just my thing, and when they stopped being my thing, I just stopped in general. And I know it's easier for a weed smoker to be like, I'm not addicted, because like you really can just like decide to not smoke and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But like there was definitely like a cold turkey period of my, I want to say like 2 or 3 months ago, where I was just like, man, I miss it. I miss
Oh
being
yeah, of
I
course.
miss being subtly unaware of my existence. I miss being lazy and not thinking about like the void as I'm trying to watch anime. Like
For
sitting here
sure.
eating Cheetos trying to not think about, how and when I'm going to die.
You just gotta find a different substance. I don't know, but not like opioids. That's bad. Maybe like tren. Try like some sort of steroid. You know, get jacked. Get
Just
into the
start
body.
shooting up all this shit.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Get angry. There's so
There you
much to get
go.
angry about.
Don't get even,
Um,
get angry. I like that.
uh,
That's good. That's what we'll teach the kids.
I'm always just thinking about what recreational drug could I throw into my life? What do I need?
To
Something
really
that
to
not
really
everybody's
get
doing.
topsy turvy.
I want to get into the esoteric shit. The stuff that only has like numbers for names, all the research chemicals. I don't want to do that. Parenthetically. All right, I'm ready. I think I'm ready for this story.
Yeah, the preamble, right? We were talking about what we wanted to read today because I think it's almost like I feel like there's a one for you, one for me kind of mentality with how we do your episodes, and like the last episode was just really fucking dumb that I was just like, all right,
Oh yeah.
let's do something that's not as dumb, at least not on the surface, at least not like knowingly dipping my toe into it, knowing that it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, we'll see.
Um
Yeah. Do you know anything about this story?
No, I don't vet any of my shit. I'm just saying,
Right, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if I've held on to this for a while and I got it from, I'm gonna assume Reddit No Sleep or Creepy Pasta, then there's a chance that it's popular and that people know about it and it's a thing. Like, I liked Showers. I haven't re-listened to it in a while, but I remember like picking that up saying this is probably gonna be dumb, and then I ended up liking it. So, I'm always open to being surprised, but I don't think there was a palatable troll, like, I don't know, troll mentality, like skepticism to our last episode together, where I was just like, well, this is just gonna be horse shit. Like, after the first story, I was just like, well, now we need to just continue reading horse shit for the rest of the episode. Whereas, like, if this starts off as even vaguely promising, I'm interested to see where it goes. If it ends flat, then, it is what it is, but I'm interested to see where it goes. The title intrigued both of us. It's the reason I got it. We reside in Pennsylvania, so there was always a intrigue with someone writing a horror story about our state.
It's a spooky state, I think.
It is one of the, yeah, I've done a kind of there was an earlier episode where I kind of did like a cross country jaunt, kind of talking about the creepiest places in each state, and Pennsylvania is known for a lot of really cool things. Like George Romero is from Pennsylvania, so we're the home of the zombie. He was in Pittsburgh. Yeah, he was in Pittsburgh. He works with Tom Savini. Savini, I believe, was from Jersey, but he came over to Pennsylvania to help with George Romero and, Creep Show and Night of the Living Dead and all of those movies. Well, after Night of the Living Dead, because that was Romero. But after that point, Savini, was his tutor at that point. And Savini opened up a horror makeup studio and film studio in Pittsburgh in honor of George Romero. But George Romero, you can go to Pittsburgh, outside Pittsburgh, and actually see like the filming locations for Night of the Living Dead and go to the cemetery and stuff, and it's really fun, and kind of playing I Spy, going around looking for certain tombstones and shit. I did that, which is why I'm speaking from experience.
I was gonna say that sounds sick.
What else? Pennsylvania has M. Night Shyamalan.
That's true.
M. Night Shyamalan was a Philly native. He films almost all of his stuff in or around Philly. I talk about my love for Sixth Sense and Signs and Village, because all of them were filmed locally, and Unbreakable, like, filmed in the city, all about the city, all about, notable places all around Philadelphia. Signs was outside Philly, I want to say, like, the Levittown-ish, Lansdale-ish area. I'm related to all of that. It's just all, I've been going to and from Philly my entire life. So, like, growing up with that, I remember being 13, watching like Sixth Sense and Signs for the first time, and just being like, oh, like I know these places.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Lynch Philadelphia connection?
No.
How David Lynch has said that like a lot of his work has been inspired by Philadelphia.
I didn't know that, and I love Lynch.
Yeah, he basically says, it's not a very positive thing, but he basically says that his time in Philly was like, you could like sense the fear and like grime and filth in
He's
the
not
air.
someone I go to for positivity, but he is someone I go to for creativity. So it's kind of funny you say that, though, because there is a kind of, I don't know, Poconos-ish bumblefuck quality to Twin Peaks now that I think about it.
Yeah, so he's got a bunch of quotes about Philly. It's things like, yes, Philadelphia is horrible, but in a very interesting way. There were places there that had been allowed to decay, where there was so much fear and crime that just for a moment there had been an opening to another world. It was fear, but it was
Mm.
so strong and so magical, like a magnet. Um, so yeah, he has said on multiple occasions how like a lot of his like early work and painting and stuff, because he started as a painter,
Hmm.
was inspired by Philadelphia itself. And speaking as someone who lives here, like I love Philly. It is also unquestionably like kind of a spooky city, and like kind of like he says, like there's a lot of urban decay and stuff like that. And I kind of get what he's saying.
Oh
Um,
yeah, big old trash town.
yeah, love Philly, love Philly. So yeah,
I
there's a
I
lot
went to
of
school in Philly. I lived in Philly for 7 or 8ish years. I was all around there. My dad lives outside of Philly. Yeah, I just wasn't aware of the Lynch connection, but that's really fun.
yeah.
I
Yeah, I
think.
learned about it a couple years ago, and I was like, "Huh, that does actually make sense." Like having watched Twin Peaks: The Return, and like some of the
Uh
stuff that
huh.
he does, I'm like, this feels like he lifted it straight out of like a Philadelphia, like something he experienced directly in Philadelphia.
Probably. I love that for him.
Yeah,
Very good. Yeah, there's a lot of really notable, historically spooky shit that comes out of Pennsylvania, and I I don't often like talk about it or give us as much credit, but like, you do the research, it's absolutely there. I think there's something about the Northeast that's very
yeah.
like
Like New England is
Like
definitely
Stephen
the
King.
heart.
Yeah, like Stephen King is always talking about Maine, and
Hmm.
it's just like, okay, so there's something unknowingly, uh just kind of dark and
Yeah,
evil about the stormy like Northeast.
I feel like all of American folk horror resides in the Northeast. Like all
Yeah.
of the sort of like connections to the witch trials and
Uh-huh.
pilgrims and Puritans. You
Uh-huh.
just get a lot of it concentrated. And then even like more modern stuff. Like I feel like I'm not like a horror head, but I feel like Amityville Horror, that's all New
New
England,
York.
right? Um,
Yeah, New
The
York.
Exorcist, I think, is also New England. I could be wrong about that, but I'm having a
Amityville
hard
is
time.
Amityville is New York, but I feel
Hmm,
like
interesting. Okay.
but I could be wrong about Exorcist. I know Amityville is New York. And you're right. Connecticut, um old ghost investigators, ghost hunter stories. A lot of that stuff kind of comes out of the Northeast. The couple, the Warrens, they're from the Northeast. Um, yeah, we got that old school evil. We got that
Hell
old
yeah.
school spooky spook. We
Love
got
that
that.
up here.
We got that ghosty ghost. We got that old school haunted feel going on. Like, what do you got, Midwest? Nothing. Tornadoes. Well,
Absolutely nothing.
maybe we got those soon too.
Soon, yeah, absolutely. Keep an eye out.
But still, no one's writing horror stories about like being some dickhead in Portland. You know, um,
Right.
you're a dickhead in Deepwoods, Pennsylvania. That's what people are writing about.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Represent.
And I think the funnier reason about picking this with you as well is just like, to rehash it again from your first episode. Like, we met at a sleepaway camp. We met like at this random place in the middle of the woods, in the middle of the mountains, without like any type of city nearby. Like, it was like minimally like a 20-minute drive to the nearest like town. Um, and
Yeah.
it's just like, what a when I think of Pennsylvania and I think of the things that like scared me the most as a kid, I often did think of the woods. Um,
Sure.
this comes up in my like Slender Man episodes a lot, but it's just like nothing is more like debilitating as a kid as like darkness, but also mixed with like trees and how the shadows kind of play tricks on your eyes and make you think you're seeing things like in between the trees, or the trees casting on other trees. Like, it's a different type of darkness. Like, it's a different type of fear. Like,
Absolutely.
there's
There's too many silhouettes. You're completely right. Because as a kid, even in my bedroom, like if I saw like a pile of clothes and I
Yeah.
wasn't like totally clear about like, is that a pile of clothes? It was like 5 feet away from me, but the room's dark enough that I could hallucinate that shape to be any number of horrifying things. And in the woods, there's too many branches,
you're
shrubs,
surrounded.
overturned logs. There's just a million silhouettes and shapes. And not to mention, like, you can hear anything that takes a step
Correct.
in like
Yeah.
100 yards of you.
Camping
You
was
can't
always
see that
super
far.
nutty.
Yeah.
There's this story my buddy tells me about the most horrifying experience he ever had, and he did it to himself, and he laughs about it. But he did a ton of acid, and then walked into his nearby woods and just sat there like all night. I want to say from like 3 a.m. to like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 a.m. to like watch the sun come up, and he was just like, those like first 3 or 4 hours until the sun came up, I was on pins and needles. Just like anything that moved caused me to like take off running, and I was like, running where? And he was like, deeper into the woods. And I'm
Dude,
just like,
that's horrible. That sounds like an awful night.
yeah, but he laughs about it.
Well, sure, yeah, in retrospect, it's very funny. But I can imagine he was fucking shitting himself.
There's something weird about my personal history with like always growing up near a fucking forest. Like, only the house I'm in right now is not near a forest, but I grew up next to an actual park, just full of trees, full of a forest, like people walking through there back behind my yard like all the fucking time, and like being told to stay away from the back fence cuz people were walking back there all the time, just like weird shit. And then like I moved to like Bucks County, like outside of Bucks County, as you know, I got older, and I went to live with my dad for a little bit, and it was just like woods, woods on woods on woods, driving through woods, living in woods, woods everywhere, deer everywhere, animals everywhere, just like constantly being like driving at night at like a heightened like a level of like level 11 of anxiousness, of like worried about hitting some animal or driving off a cliff. Like,
Yeah.
just like getting stuck out there. Like, the woods are just fucking terrifying, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think driving too is like something about having just that bit of illumination, and where at any moment something can kind of step into view from either side of the road, and like frequently it does. Like deer will pop their head out, and it always makes me want to jump out of my skin, because
Absolutely.
I always think it's going to be like not a deer and something else.
I mean, I've seen tons of bears. Like, just there's a point a bear like fucking chased my car for like 3 miles, and I was just like, if I slow down even a little bit, this bear's gonna come over and fucking Jurassic Park my fucking vehicle, just flip it over and like eat me out of the inside. Yeah, it's just Pennsylvania and our woods and our mountains. Like, there's something to be said, and I'm making a point here because the story is literally called Deepwoods, Pennsylvania, and that can go in so many fucking directions. Because the show started off, we were reading search and rescue stories. Me and a buddy of mine were reading search and rescue stories on the show, and it's just like, we got that because like we might not be in like fucking like Michigan near any like fucking giant mile long like get lost in the woods to the point of being fucking dead, but like we've all grown up around giant forests and giant woods, and like we know the things that live in there, and we know how terrifying it could be to get lost in there. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, that's been a part of this show since it started. The fear of the woods, the fear of nature and what resides in the shadows. So like, you know, just even reading the like part 1 title, the lost town of Deepwoods, PA, makes me think, like, I immediately think of like six different things. Like, what did they call them? The melon-heads? The Pennsylvania myth?
The melon-head? I'm unfamiliar.
You've never heard of the melon-heads?
No. Is it like a pyramid head?
No, I wish. No, there's this spooky story. Maybe it's a local thing. Maybe only the story about Pennsylvania Ave. I don't know. You probably haven't heard of it. If you drive down Pennsylvania Ave in like my nearby city in my valley that I'm staying nondescript.
Yeah.
If you drive down Pennsylvania Ave, you eventually get to a forest, and when you get to a forest, you get to a dead end, and at the end of the dead end is like this really shitty series of like smaller buildings, smaller townhouses and shit, and supposedly the only people that live there are a bunch of backwater, inbred, pale, disgusting, Hills Have Eyes-ish, mutated freaks, right?
Right.
And I think the code name for them was melon-heads, and it's because they've been so inbred that they're deformed.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, no, I've never heard of them. But, having been around PA, I... Actually, no comment. I'm going to just let that one...
Just gonna let that one slide right off. But it's just funny. Like I think of that. I think of Concrete City. I think of the mining towns up north in northeastern PA. Concrete City was this place, I want to say, built in like the 30s, 50s, somewhere in there, as supposed to be the new like housing development. It was supposed to be this new thing where like the miners could have affordable housing like right next to the mines, and the geniuses that they made the entire duplex, like the entire town, out of concrete. Well, what's funny about building an entire fucking like town out of concrete is insulation and mold. A bunch of people got sick really fast. The summers were awful because concrete doesn't breathe. All of the humidity and all the stuff that they like got trapped in the wood on the inside of the concrete. They had to gut everything, pull it all out. The town was shut down within like the first 2 years of it being opened. Now, if you were to drive up to northeastern PA, I want to say like Nanacoke, just outside of Wilkes-Barre, if you were to go off into the woods there in the right direction, you would actually find the full concrete skeletons of these like 2-story buildings, just maybe 12 to 14 of them just still standing out there on private property. It would look like a ghost town. It would look like a lost town,
I mean, we've got a couple of them at least, right? Because Centralia is the same way.
Centralia is the same way. That's another good spooky. That's the inspiration for Silent Hill.
Oh, is it really?
It is. Centralia is the inspiration for Silent Hill.
That's
a town that is constantly burning to the point of just always the mist, the fog, the smoke.
Just the hellfire underneath.
The hellfire.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Hellmouth, but it exists in PA.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm excited about this.
It has an ability to go places, but it always comes down to the execution of the author. So, do you want to start?
Sure.
Cool. Go for it.
All right. So this is Deepwoods, PA. The lost town of Deepwoods, PA. When I was a kid, my dad traveled a lot for work. Back then, his company was growing exponentially, and my father was sent to oversee the opening of new stores all across the country. In 2002, he had a particularly busy year. My dad was assigned to a store in Pennsylvania, and because it was a longer assignment, and because it was summertime as well, he decided to take my mom and I with him.
The store was Toys R Us at the height of its game. Little did he know the future would not be kind to him.
Maybe that's the horror. It's just him, like, sort of like really lomaning it at the end of this. Since we were going to be there for 2 months, they gave us a fully furnished house in the suburbs. It was 2 stories tall and at the end of a very lonely cul-de-sac. The town itself was very small, with a little over 3,000 residents, and the suburb where we stayed was even more rural. So that's like Twin Peaks numbers, 3,000.
Yeah.
The sign says 30,000. That's basically 3,000. Our neighborhood was, well, do you know that? I don't mean to keep derailing about Twin Peaks.
I love Twin Peaks. I'm okay with the derailment.
Are you aware of the fact that they initially had that sign say population 3,000, and one of the producers was like, no one's going to watch a show about a town this small, so they tagged on another 0 onto the sign?
I was not aware of that, but it's hilarious that you bring that up because there's absolutely no way there are 30,000 people living in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, no, there's like 8. There's like maybe 8.
Just what I know about the show, and I watched the entire thing when The Return originally came out, and it's just like, and I had watched the original series 10, 12 years ago, you know, it's just, there was no fucking way. Everyone knew each other's names. I'd be surprised if there were more than 300 people in that town.
Our neighborhood was relatively new, and most of the houses were still empty. The housing development, Lone Wood, had only just started cutting into the dense forest that surrounded it, and all the empty houses gave a very eerie, albeit boring, feel. Lucky for me, there were a few other kids who lived in Lone Wood, and one of them happened to be my age. Jamie and I were both 12, and really, that was all we needed to have in common. We had a lot of fun that summer. Being a city kid, I was eager to explore all the bike trails local kids had made out in the woods. The city of Middlesbrough was a very old town which was incorporated sometime in the 1800s. The town had tons of history, but nothing really to do. One particularly boring Sunday, Jamie and I went to the town museum. It was pretty boring, as expected, until we heard some kid ask an employee about the lost town. The employee replied that that was just a legend, but that was enough to pique my curiosity. I quizzed Jamie about it, but he didn't seem to know much either. It was a full 5 weeks into the summer before I finally got my questions answered. Jamie and I were building a bike ramp over a narrow stream late one afternoon. That's, see, parenthetically, that is definitely a Pennsylvania thing to do.
Oh yeah, I did that.
Jamie and I were building a bike ramp over a narrow stream late one afternoon. We saw a group of 5 teenagers boisterously heading out into the woods. They were carrying flashlights and beer, several of them trying to scare the girls of the group into turning back. I wonder where they're going, I mused as I glanced over at Jamie. He stood up and wiped his brow.
I know where they're going.
Where? I stood up, dusted the dirt off my shorts. The novelty of living in a small town had weeks ago given way to boredom, and I jumped on anything that sounded remotely interesting.
They're looking for the lost town.
He sighed regretfully. Okay. Okay, seriously, what is that? I knew you knew more than you let on. I need to know, Jamie. I need to know. I shook his shoulders and mocked staring.
I just have to know.
I gotta know what's in the woods.
All right, I'll tell you. Jeez, Katie.
Oh, I'm a woman. Jamie picked up his bike and started walking down the bike path. I grabbed mine and followed him.
The lost town is just a dumb legend. The stories say that Middlesbrough had a sister city nearby, somewhere out in the woods. Then one day, like a century and a half ago, the whole town just disappeared. Fucking Roanoke, that shit. The people left or died. Nobody knows. Nobody even remembers the name of the town. It's like a rite of passage or something for kids to go looking for it.
Jamie, we should...
No.
He stopped and turned to look at me.
Some kid went looking for it in the 70s and never came back. They found his body like 10 years later in the middle of nowhere. He got lost out there. It's easy to do. Everything looks the same.
He was a total idiot. Probably on drugs. It was the 70s. We are a totally different generation. We have sat-nav.
Sat-nav?
Is this written by an Australian? You looked at me curious.
Sat-nav? Crikey.
Jamie had lived in this town his whole life, and sometimes I forgot how sheltered he was. Satellite navigation? My dad has a GPS, and he totally wouldn't notice missing for a day. Come on, Jamie, it'd be so much fun!
So he's gonna break out the TomTom.
Hell yeah. Get the Garmin.
Get the Garmin! I'd better get it back.
Jamie looked at his watch and then mounted his bike.
My dad is taking me to a movie tonight.
We rode in an uncomfortable silence, until an idea struck me as we rolled over the abandoned train tracks. They were old and almost buried by plant growth. Hey, I know you don't want to talk about it, but has anyone ever found anything?
No. Well, my friend's older brother said he found some human bones out there once, but no one believed him.
Oh. And where do people look?
Well, almost everybody goes to the lake.
He pointed to the left of us, where we'd seen the teenagers heading earlier.
It's pretty deep back there, but they figure that if there was another town, they would have lived by the lake, so that's where they go.
Well, you know what I would do? I would follow the train tracks. I mean, they look pretty old, and I don't know why they would lay them going back into those woods unless there was something back there, so, I mean, that's where I'd go. Jamie considered this and then nodded.
Yeah, I guess I could buy that. No one follows the tracks that way, though. That's where that kid disappeared went.
I wasn't swayed. I didn't bring up the lost town again until 2 weeks later. It was the weekend before we were moving home, and my parents had a barbecue for the employees of Dad's new store and some of our neighbors. Jamie and I hung out inside the house and played my N64 while we flirted pretty outrageously. There had been an unspoken sort of mutual attraction throughout the summer that no one had the guts to act on. Since I was moving home in 5 days, there was really nothing left to lose. What do we think they were playing on the N64?
Damn, also, I hope some, like, Diddy Kong Racing.
Ah, that's good, that's good. I just feel like a lot of N64 games would preclude flirting. Like, you can't play,
Smash Bros?
Smash Bros. You can't play...
Mario Party?
No, fucking, no way. The moment someone steals a star, you will never see them romantically. It's just how it works. Unless you're
Mario Kart, like even Mario Kart 64, it's just full of fuck yous.
Yeah, no, Diddy Kong Racing is a good pull.
Because it's not as serious.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a great game. Great game. Gotta recommend it. Play Diddy Kong.
I was like Conker's Bad Fur Day, like GoldenEye, like there's a bunch of good recommendations. Like if you know any of these kids out there have no idea what I'm fucking talking about right now.
For sure. I used to play Track and Field 2000s. You can play that.
Jet Force Gemini.
Okay. Man, missed the N64. Although his intentions were probably pure and genuine, I'm embarrassed to say that mine were not. I thought if I could make him want to impress me, he would agree to go looking for the lost town.
Oh shit.
The legend had thoroughly consumed me. I had been to the local library every morning for the past week, looking for more information on the town, and had found nothing. But legends don't just come from nowhere. I was sure of it. I knew if we didn't leave by 2 p.m., we wouldn't have enough daylight to carry out my plan. I already had a backpack packed with water, a flashlight, a camera, and a can of red spray paint. I figured if we left the tracks, we would need a way to find our way back to them. I thought I was so clever. Nothing in that backpack made a damn bit of difference in the end. I was a fool. I set my controller down and turned to look at Jamie.
I want to stop and focus on that sentence for a second. Nothing in that backpack made a damn bit of difference in the end. I was a fool. I love that type of hindsight because it makes me think of Baraska, which I'm getting similar vibes from. I'm sitting here like crossing my fingers and saying like, please don't let the twist be Baby Mill. Like, please
Baby Mill.
Please don't let the twist be Baby Mill. Oh,
somebody's getting milled. I know that for sure.
So Baraska was this huge fucking series I read with Django, and it was this town in the Midwest where people like they have a mystery, you know, this legend of these people who come down from the mountains and kidnap, you know, misbehaving kids. And, like, you know, kids would actually go missing and no one would be able to explain it. And, like, after, like, 3 full parts of reading this story, on the 3rd episode we find out that, like, the town officials are abducting younger women to put them in a baby mill, and they're impregnating them and selling the kids because there's minerals in the water that stop the men from being able to reproduce with the women who also live there and also drink the water.
Okay. Huh. That's tough. That's a tough one.
Oh, it was really fucked up, and it hurt to read. So I'm sitting here saying, please, for the love of God, don't have the twist be Baby Mill.
I'm thinking we're safe.
Well, that's what you think until the twist is Baby Mill.
Sure, yeah. Or it could be, the teabagging clown. You don't never know when that's
If
gonna come
only,
out.
if only.
So, do you want to go out to the woods one last time? I raised my eyebrow at him and smiled.
Yeah.
He said excitedly, and he jumped off the couch. Then, embarrassed, he cast his eyes down at the floor.
Yeah, like, if you want to, like, that's cool.
Cool, let's go. I grabbed his hand and ran for the front door, grabbing my strategically placed backpack on the way. Jamie didn't even notice it. He was walking faster than I was. When we had gotten a decent way into the trees, Jamie turned around and looked briefly at my face before casting his eyes to the ground. He rubbed the back of his neck.
I've actually, like, wanted to kiss you all summer.
I was stunned to silence, absolutely dumbfounded that Jamie had found the guts to say something like this. I knew I needed to fill the awkward silence left in its wake, so I did the only thing I could think of. I leaned in and kissed him. It was the awkward first kiss of two 12-year-olds, but it made me feel warm and sent a flight of butterflies swirling into my stomach. So I actually really did like Jamie. How about that?
How about that?
How about that? Just now, time to go die. I let him go, and his face was the same shade of red that I'd imagined mine was. He quickly changed the subject to how long he'd wanted to ask me out, but that he didn't think I liked him back. We walked for a while, carrying on this conversation, him oblivious to his surroundings, me subtly leading the way. I took him stumbling over the tracks to break off his monologue and finally noticed the backpack. He looked at me like I'd punched him in the face.
You can't be serious.
Jamie, I know, but look, this is the last time I'm going to see you in a really long time, and I want to remember it today. We'll only be out for 2 hours max. We'll be back before they even realize we're gone. Jamie stared at the tracks for a minute and seemed to be considering it all. I held my breath until he finally let out a deep sigh.
Okay.
Oh my god, Jamie, He held up his finger, cutting me off.
But we follow the tracks the entire time, and we turn around after an hour.
Okay. I was so excited that I hugged him. It would be the first and last time I ever did.
Oh, shit.
Well, that's tough. As we walked, we talked about all sorts of mundane things, stopping only to make sure we were still on the tracks. It felt like we'd only been walking for 45 minutes, but when Jamie checked his watch, it had been 3 hours.
That's weird. It hasn't been 3 hours. It says it's 5 o'clock.
He trailed off. I swear, we left just after 2. It can't be 5, dude. Your watch is busted. I gave him a playful shove. Jamie raised his eyebrow at me and smiled.
Even so, we should probably turn around.
He wasn't wrong. The sun was setting. The shadows were long, and looking around, I wondered if it really was 5 o'clock. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. As we had been walking, I'd noticed something taking shape off on our right. A large mass, maybe a quarter mile away. It was denser than the area around it and seemed to have clean, man-made lines. Jamie, look. He turned.
Yeah. I was hoping you hadn't noticed that. It's a long way off, though, so we would never find the tracks again.
Yes, we would. Check it out. I triumphantly pulled the spray paint out of my backpack. It's for the trees. He took the can and shook it, then made an experimental X on a nearby tree.
Okay, but I get to do the spraying.
I didn't argue. The closer we got to the mass, the more it took shape. First we could tell it was a building. Then we could tell it was a church. By the time we got to the front door, we were looking at a very old and dilapidated chapel. Remembering my camera, I took a picture of the wooden plaque over the door. Whatever had been written on it had long ago worn away. We walked around the church in awe. There was a building. The building was small, maybe 500 square feet. The windows were surprisingly all intact, but were so caked with dirt and grime that we couldn't see anything inside. How do we get in? I asked quietly.
I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out. Wait until my brother hears about this. I mean, holy shit, look at this place.
His excitement was contagious. The front door had a pull handle, but try as we might, we couldn't seem to open the door. Do you think it's locked? I asked as I watched Jamie struggle with it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it must be. There was a door around back, though.
The door at the back was a lot more sympathetic and let us in with relative ease. We were standing in a small room with an old wooden desk attached to a wall. There was a small fireplace and old portraits hung up around the tiny office. The people in the pictures were all standing in front of some maroon background, were looking down at us disapprovingly. Books were scattered everywhere, most in a language I had never seen before. The floor was covered in dirt, and a pair of old shoes was lying haphazardly in one corner. Whoa, I said in awe.
A pair of... No, just a single pair of old shoes, but books? Yeah, okay. See, it's when you see a pile of shoes that there's, like, reason to be concerned.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, whoa!
I looked over at Jamie, who had a huge smile on his face. He was holding up a cross and a piece of paper. What is it? I walked over to see.
It's a list of names, like 60 people on the list, maybe a town census?
Let me see. I pulled my flashlight out of my backpack and shined it on the parchment. Deepwood. Do you think that's the name of the town? All these names are crossed out, all except this one. I pointed to a name at the very bottom.
Maybe it was a plague.
You think it's a list of the dead? Jamie shrugged.
Makes as much sense as anything else.
The plague? I know there are 12.
The plague. Religious.
Maybe it was
The locusts have come.
I don't know when America was founded. They had the plague, right? Come on, it was old back then. I walked over to the desk and leaned against it. Why do you think they left? I mean, look, there's a jacket or something on that chair, and shoes over there. The town pastor or whatever, he just took off and left everything like this?
Or died,
said Jamie as he folded the paper and put it into the backpack. Yeah, died. Either way, it must have been creepy as hell to be alone in here. I stared at one of the portraits for several long seconds. The young woman painted there seemed to be staring down at me with a very accusatory look. It made me incredibly uncomfortable. I was so absorbed in the paintings that I didn't notice the slow creaking from overhead until the ceiling cracked loudly as it started to cave in. I screamed and covered my head, but the next thing I knew, I was lying on my back over the threshold of a door, Jamie on top of me protecting his head. Oh, thanks, I mumbled as I gently pushed Jamie off of me.
Don't mention it.
Jamie climbed to his feet and brushed himself off. I glanced at him. I glanced behind him at the office, which was now filled floor to ceiling with decaying debris. Jamie, that was our way out.
That's okay. We can unlock the front door now that we're inside, or break one of the windows.
The back office was unsettlingly. Huh. No, that is what's written. I'm going to read what they meant to write. If the back office was unsettling, the chapel was downright disturbing. Even though the grimy windows allowed very little sunlight in, I could make out 8 rows of pews lining a narrow aisle and a tall podium at the front of the chapel. Jamie and I stumbled around the small nave, breaking windows on either side with pieces of wood we had found. The sun was still setting, and I wondered how much of a difference the muted light would make. When I broke the last window on my side, I turned back around to survey the chapel, disappointed that the lighting wasn't much better. The room itself seemed to repel light. The wooden pews were completely rotted. In fact, the wood we had used to break the windows of the church were leg stands from the front row. The narrow aisle in the rows of pews was littered with leaves and rotting wood, but that was nothing compared to what sat on the altar. It wasn't a podium, as I had thought earlier. It was a statue of the crucifixion, but unlike any that I had ever seen before. The paint had been worn away on every part of the statue except the blood of the crucifixion wounds, which stood bright and realistic and seemed to be oozing before our very eyes. The only other surface left untouched by the decay of time was the face of Jesus. The details of his face were still so incredibly minute and perfect, and he had the same accusing eyes as the portraits in the pastor's office. He seemed to be staring directly at me, and I could tell Jamie felt the same, though he was across the room from me. The statue's stare awarded me an edge of panic, and I realized that we needed to leave. We weren't wanted here. I had the sudden feeling that we were trespassing on some sort of hallowed ground. We had found the church, we had documents proving we'd been there, and now it was time to go. I turned to Jamie to tell him so, and could immediately tell that he did not share my feelings. He'd been born and bred on these legends, and nothing was going to tear him away from our discovery. I watched him walk over and grab the camera out of my bag. He took pictures of everything he deemed interesting, including the crucifixion statue, much to my unease. I gave him several minutes before I said something. Jamie, think we need to leave, I said in a low voice. Jamie stopped and looked up, seeming to remember I was there.
Are you kidding? This is what you came for. We have to bring home evidence of all of it.
It's going to be dark in half an hour. It's already hard to see in here.
Duh, that's why I'm using the flash. Hey, can you get a picture of me next to the creepy Jesus thing?
I guess, I mumbled as I took the camera from him. I didn't even want to look at it, much less photograph it. But if it would help me get him out of here, I was going to stomach it. Jamie wrapped his arm around it as I snapped the picture. Don't touch it! Oh, crap, why did you touch it? There's something off about that thing, Jamie. Can we frickin' go now, please?
Yeah, fine.
Jamie walked over and picked up the backpack as I headed towards the door. I noticed there was no lock on it. I pushed against the door as hard as I could. It didn't budge. My heart sank. There wasn't even a handle or a knob. It was just a solid piece of wood with strange markings on it, symbols that I had never seen before. Jamie, the door is stuck, I said as I turned around to see him testing a piece of the floor with his foot. What are you doing? I asked, hearing the edge of panic in my voice. He was still at the front of the chapel, a foot from the Jesus statue, hopping back and forth from one part of the floor to another. The statue's eyes seemed to be only on him now.
There's something under here, see? I heard the floorboard creak under his left foot as he put weight on it.
Jamie, don't.
No, it's like under the dirt, right here. The floor is hollow. He kneeled down and started digging through the thin layer of dirt. It's like a trap door or something. And it was indeed a trap door. By the time I had walked the length of the pews, Jamie already had the edges dug halfway out.
Let's just leave it, and your brother and his friends can come back and see what it is. Please, Jamie, I want to go.
There was something wrong with this place. Terribly wrong. And the thought of spending one more minute here had me on the precipice of a panic attack. Something I hadn't experienced in over a year. I sat down against the front pew and put my head down. I heard a roaring in my ears, and my breathing grew labored. I had to leave here even without Jamie. I rocked back and forth for a few minutes as I tried to calm myself down. I would climb out of a window and run in any direction, it didn't matter. There's something here, under the church. Jamie's voice sounded a million miles away. It's a baby mill.
Don't say it, man.
By the time...
Maybe it's a bunch of dead bodies.
Yeah, hopefully. By the time I pulled myself together enough to lift my head, Jamie was knelt next to me. I didn't know you were claustrophobic. At least that's what I think, Jamie said. I better remember the horror I felt as I stared at the hole in the floor. Jamie had opened the trapdoor. 2 minutes, Jamie said as he stood up. We go down, we take a couple pictures of whatever's down there, and we come right back up and we leave. Just 2 minutes, Katie, that's all I'm asking. I wanted to say no. I intended to. But I felt myself slowly nodding as Jamie pulled me to my feet, and to this day I don't understand why I agreed. But I suppose that it's better that what happened down there didn't happen to Jamie alone. I suppose it's still him going. We're gonna come back with the story of a lifetime. What if there is, like, valuable stuff down there or something? Like, old shit is always worth money. We could be rich. So rich that your family could stay here. You could buy the house you're living in and come to school with me in September. I managed a small smile. Of all things someone could think of to buy with wealth, Jamie's first thought was to keep me here with him. And he was right. There could be anything down there, and almost all old stuff was valuable. I took a deep breath.
Okay. 2 minutes.
I agreed. As we leaned over the trapdoor and peered down, the first thing we noticed was an intense heat emanating upward from the hole. The second was the strangely out-of-place spiral staircase leading into the depths below. Jamie rolled the flashlight over to me with his foot, and I picked it up as he pulled his lighter out of his pocket. Ladies first, He smirked at me. I stared at him, slack-jawed.
No way. You found this door. You go first. Between the black staircase and the heat, I feel like we're descending directly into hell. I'm not going first.
I crossed my arms and glared at him to reinforce my point. Jamie simply shrugged and stepped onto the staircase. I took several deep breaths as I watched his head disappear into the darkness below, and I almost didn't follow him. I was still deciding when he yelled at me to shine the flashlight down the stairs so he could see. I started down the stairs after him, and they went down much further than I thought, and it became warmer and warmer the further down it went. When we finally reached the bottom, I was holding back what threatened to be a massive anxiety attack. We were farther beneath the church than I thought we'd be, and it was hot and muggy and difficult to breathe. Hoping to get this over with as fast as possible, I swung the flashlight around the chamber, hoping to reveal its hidden treasure. And what I saw there I can never describe, though I have tried to many times. And I'm going to try to right now as I describe it. The room was entirely empty, save for two things. One was a desk in the corner, much like the one in the pastor's office. The second was another statue.
That's an easy description. Also,
Yes.
This is a boss chamber. Oh, it's just a big empty room under this church.
You
I
have
thought
been
nothing
playing
will
too
kill
much
me.
Elden Ring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely have.
This statue was roughly 12 feet tall and remains to this day the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. To put it mildly, it was some sort of demon. It towered over us, and as such, I could only see the bottom of its jaws from where I was. It was looking directly ahead of it, at the staircase we had just ascended. Its tail was long and swept around the entire room, and there wasn't a lot of room to move. It had claws like any modern depiction of a demon, and as I moved around the chamber to view its profile, I noticed it had horns as well. Neither Jamie nor I spoke as we shuffled around the room, our backs to the wall, as far away from the demon as physically possible. I stepped carefully over the tail as I made my way to its back, and came around to the other side of the statue. I couldn't take my eyes from it. I couldn't trust it. If the statue upstairs seemed to bleed, what could this one do? As I eyed the talons of the gigantic stone feet, Jamie broke the silence. "Can you even believe this shit?" His voice was coming from the other side of the room, and I searched the darkness for a weak glow of his lighter and was relieved to see it moving toward me. I turned my flashlight upward to shine it on the side of the demon's head, and the horns had to be at least a foot tall. And as I brought it down to see where Jamie was, I hit my arm on something hard. "Ow, my head!" Jamie squeaked as my flashlight fell to the ground and rolled under the desk.
God damn it, Jamie.
I whispered in a panic, dropped to my knees, and felt around under the desk, searching for the flashlight. "What? It's not my fault you cracked me on the head." I stood back and swung the light around to see Jamie trying to relight his lighter, but it wasn't him that stopped me dead. I will forever be frozen in that moment. I don't know why I couldn't speak, couldn't scream, couldn't move. All I could feel was my own in-turn descent into madness. As I had moved the beam of light up to Jamie's face, I had seen another face right next to his. A twisted, angry, soulless face. The demon's. The statue had bent down and turned to the side, its head mere inches from Jamie's, and it was staring at me. I can't describe its face, but I'm gonna describe its face. Maybe not. I'm not sure my mind will ever let me remember it in detail. It shook me to my core in a literal sense. My body was having a dark, violent, visceral reaction to this impossibility. Jamie finally noticed the flashlight shaking in my hand and turned to see what I was looking at, and it wasn't until he started screaming that I was shaken from my paralysis and I dropped the flashlight. Jamie dropped everything else, and we ran. We took the stairs 2, 3 at a time, Jamie pushing me up ahead of him, and halfway up I slipped and we both went tumbling down halfway to the bottom, and in that horrible moment we heard the grinding of stone against stone, and we knew that the statue was moving. Jamie screamed, but I was mute, too terrified to make a sound. We got up and kept climbing, never taking our eyes off of the small dying light above us, our only salvation now. We were almost to the top when we first heard it on the stairs. It was so large and so heavy that the entire staircase shook with impact. Terrified that the stairs would come crashing down and we would be left alone with it below, we jumped the last 3 steps. Jamie pushed me up out of the opening and he climbed out after me and tried to slam the trapdoor shut, but it was somehow stuck. We could hear a deafening thunder on the staircase as the statue slowly climbed the steps, and I helped Jamie try to push the trapdoor closed and for the first time noticed the symbols on the bottom of the wood, the same as those on the front door. Before I could begin to comprehend it, I noticed the demons first penetrate the shaft of light on the staircase below. It was coming. Jamie saw it too and pulled me to a standing position while pointing at the front door. We both ran at it as hard as we could, but when we hit it, it didn't budge, and we tried again, but it was unsympathetic. Or any other word that could describe something that doesn't budge when you run up against it. Katie, the windows! We ran to the closest one and tried to climb up the wall to get out, but the windows were too high. The thunder from below was getting louder and closer. It was more than halfway up the stairs. We tried to climb onto the rotting pews to reach the windows, but they crumbled under our weight. "I'll push you out. Give me your foot," Jamie yelled over the sound bellowing from below. I shook my head. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but I couldn't leave him. I couldn't leave Jamie to face that thing alone. We both looked over at the door again. Our only chance was to keep trying to break it down. We stumbled back into the aisle and ran at the front door with everything we had, and I thought I felt it move. We backed up even further and ran at it again, and this time the impact knocked me backwards into the aisle, and Jamie barely stayed on his feet. He looked at me in horror, and I turned around to see stone horns rising up from the darkness of the trapdoor, 3 feet from where I sat. We were going to die here. I stood up, refusing to turn around again. I knew that the next step it took would bring its head into the room, and the thought of seeing its face again had me running at the door with every last bit of strength I had, and Jamie reached it at the same time, and I felt it give way as we crashed through the threshold and landed outside the church. Jamie had picked me up off the ground before I could think to move, and we were running toward the train tracks at an Olympic sprint. We could still hear the thundering on the stairs no matter how far we got from the church, and every step echoed through the woods like a gunshot until they stopped. It was here. I had no idea if we had run in the right direction or if we would be forever lost in those woods. It was now dark outside and the temperature was dropping fast. I was beginning to panic that we would never find the train tracks when I noticed Jamie wasn't next to me anymore. I turned around in a panic to find him sprawled on the ground a few yards behind me. He had tripped over one of the rails. He was up and running down the tracks before I could even ask if he was okay, and we ran until we couldn't anymore. Our running eventually slowed to a jog, and a jog to a walk. We hadn't spoken, neither of us had any idea what to say. And it wasn't until we had both gotten our breath back that one of us finally broke the silence. "How long have we been on the tracks?" Jamie's voice had an edge of barely suppressed fear. I looked at his wrist and noticed that his watch was missing. It didn't take us this long to find that place, or did it? Do you think maybe we went the wrong way? Jamie asked hesitantly. I couldn't afford to think like that. If we had somehow gotten turned around and ran the wrong way down the train tracks, then we were deeper in the woods than ever.
No, you went the right way,
I said to convince myself. That thing... I thought it was a statue, but maybe it was some crazy undiscovered giant reptile that was like hibernating and we woke it up. Jamie started. So we were going to delude ourselves into thinking that there was a scientific explanation for this, and I understood why, but I just couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
I said slowly.
Did you see the weird writing on the front door? It was on the trap door too. Do you think it was keeping it down there? Because Jamie, all those doors are open now.
Well, if it's an animal, words mean nothing to it anyway.
Yeah, if...
I trailed off, hoping he would challenge my implication. He didn't. I could tell this was something Jamie's mind wouldn't accept, but he hadn't seen its face, not like I had. It was no animal. It was made of stone. It was something sinister and ancient evil, and it had seen me, and it had seen right down into my soul. It was aware of me, and I was aware of it, and now it was free. Whatever had been keeping it beneath the church has been awkwardly destroyed by both Jamie and me. That thing was free to walk the woods, and God knows where. We walked in silence for another half hour until Jamie suddenly stopped short and started yelling. Here! We're here! He booked it down the tracks toward a swarm of flashlights and followed close behind him. As soon as Jamie reached his parents, he collapsed while I ran into my mother's arms and cried like a child. I couldn't hold it together any longer. The police report says that we were found at 4 a.m., and by our sense of time, about 3 hours after the sun had set. We had spent less than an hour in the chapel, and yet we seemed to have lost 10 hours there. We never told anyone where we had actually been, or what we had found in the lost city of Deepwood. We simply said we went for a walk to the lake and got lost in the woods. My family left Middlesbrough the following Monday, 2 days ahead of schedule. My father had another store to open, and there was really no reason to wait. Jamie didn't come to say goodbye to me, and after we left Middlesbrough, I never saw him again. I kept a copy of the police report to remember him.
Sorry, that's a really funny way to remember somebody.
I touch it fondly to think of him from time to time. Over the following year, Middlesbrough slowly disappeared. At first, I could feel the memory fading unnaturally from my mind. Oh, I thought she meant literally. Like Middlesbrough, yes. Like actually, like was dissolved as a county, as a city. Because that happens sometimes. I read another story where that happened, and like townships actually like erased a city and really confused a character.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's a funny one. My parents couldn't remember that we had ever been there, which scared me more than anything else. I taped the police report to the ceiling over my bed, like a bad poster of Justin Timberlake, so that Jamie would be the first and last thing I thought about every day. Then, the Middlesbrough City website disappeared, as did that of the local paper and the town's 2 public schools. Oh, so it is happening.
Oh, yeah.
The store my dad helped open in 2002 also disappeared from the company's website. After that, I could never find any mention of Middlesbrough anywhere online ever again. Over the years, I searched public records of Jamie's full name and found nothing. I hired someone to illegally search private records, and he came up empty too. In the end, the only proof that Jamie ever existed at all was the police report with his name on it. And then, nothing was left. One day, the paper I had taped to my ceiling for so many years was blank. I remember what it was, and what it looked like before, but now it's just an old, weathered piece of blank paper. All that remains of Middlesbrough and the people who lived there are my memories. And this is why I'm writing the story down and uploading it to the internet. Once it's on the internet, it can never die, right? Just like all those other examples of things that were on the internet got erased over time and suddenly didn't exist anymore.
Oh, no, come on, man, no.
Or perhaps one day it'll just disappear and you won't remember ever seeing it, and I won't remember even writing it. And I can only hope that this ended with Middlesbrough. If it has moved on to other towns, who would know? Who would even remember? I wish I had answers, but all I have are questions. Well, that's fun.
Chills. I like that. That was a pretty good story. I think the author exercised some pretty good restraint. I'm sure in the following two parts, we're going to find out a lot more about the mechanism for which this all happens, but I kind of like the fact that we don't.
In the part one, it's a tantalizing prospect to start with a big old mystery, big old J.J. Abrams mystery box.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see it going in that direction. That it was sort of like an annihilation demon that erased the memory of a place and all the things. It's kind of neat.
I love a good creepy statue.
Sure.
At some point, I was just like, put your faith in Jesus. Have the Jesus one start fighting the demon one.
Yeah, clearly. Come on.
It was like, you're only afraid of the demon one because you gave it your fear. Now you need to give the Jesus your faith and watch them fight to the death. That's what anime would suggest.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes as much sense as trying to run through the door as a pair of 12-year-olds.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a world where the lack of description creates a really tight story, and it has me like kind of just following along and not really asking too many questions. But there's another part of the story that's just like, why? Another part is just like, in what world does a chapel have windows that are like a small chapel, like one of those chapels, like a small chapel, have windows that are more than like, I don't know, 7 feet off the ground?
Yeah, so high that you can't reach them?
Not even one little window next to like the door so that someone walking by can look in and be like, oh, service has started, I better not go in because I don't want to make a fucking noise and be the town prick. I don't know, like, the whole, like, I keep coming back to just liking creepy statue, because creepy statue kind of falls into a niche that I think is relatively untapped, which is, like, the Weeping Angel, like, Rose Adder, Stephen King type of, SCP-173, like the statues that move when you're not looking at them thing.
Right.
That trope. I like that trope. That is a fun trope. In horror, that's one of the more terrifying tropes that I dislike. Like, I remember being, I don't know, fucking 14 watching the Don't Blink episode of Doctor Who for the first time, and it fucking terrified me. Statues are, like, super uncanny, right? Like, they look like people, they look like things, they're physical, they're three-dimensional, but they're not real. It's the same reason mannequins are, like, off-putting, you know? Like, there's an uncanny quality to how they're depicted and how real they can look. And, like, demon is where you lose me a little bit, because, like, in no world do I enter a basement, flashlight beam looking straight at this thing, and go, let's walk around it and let's take a
No.
look. No, I see a horned fucking 12-foot tall monster statue on the other side of the room, and I say, I'm gonna keep my flashlight beam on that fucking thing as I slowly back out of the room, up however many steps. Yeah.
Dropping the flashlight is an insane Velma-esque moment.
The Scooby-Doo Jinkies aspect of it really got out of hand there. And it's only like, it's only made, I mean, like, I have a very, when I read, I would say I have a very theatrical sense of depicting things in my head. And the way, like, I always felt like when I make videos and when I direct things, like, I feel like I have a really creative way of, like, framing things, because I wanted to be a director. I wanted to, I went to film school. I wanted to go into film. And, like, reading this, there's something really kind of cool about, like, the anticipation, the kind of Evil Dead-esque quality of, like, these kids in this small room trying to bust down the door, and suddenly, the trap door is open, and we're cutting back to them trying to bust open the door, and, they back up and they just take one last glance over at the door, the trap door, and you just see, like, the horns start to rise out of this darkness, and then you start to maybe see, like, the top of its face, maybe its eyes or something, as they take one last run for the door and bust it down and go running out into the woods. Like, there's a really cool kind of anticipatory, high anxiety, high stakes kind of aspect of that story. But I find everything else around it, like, that's the sweetest part. Everything else around it is just kind of unbelievable for me. Like, I would never put myself in a situation like this, and I'm just like, how did we get here? Like, from where we started.
You can kind of hand wave as 12-year-olds, right? But that only gets you so far.
Oh yeah, I don't know, my general malaise and anxiousness as a kid kept me from getting into too much trouble. I'm not very adventurous. I don't. There's a reason I'm still alive and not dead off in the woods somewhere, because I have the restraint to say, like, nah, I'm good, and turn around and walk away from a situation like this.
Yeah, you lost me at entering the building. If I can't see clearly what's in the building, I would maybe open the door.
Plus,
from
wasn't
the threshold?
Yeah,
look around.
Wasn't the whole point of just finding a building out there? Like, wouldn't it have just been enough, like, daylight, snap a picture of a church and say, let's get a bigger group and come back here later?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have opened the door. In the back, I would have opened the door and, like, literally looked in the threshold. But like I said, the moment asking me to enter an enclosed space that I can't already see what's inside of is a huge no-no. Going into a trap door that goes down into darkness.
Basements.
You couldn't.
Basements, yeah.
To do that. That's just like a recipe, even discounting supernatural things. If the staircase breaks, you're fucked.
I think we had this discussion when we were doing Showers, because Showers was like, these kids went out into these kids went out into the middle of, like, a field, and there was just, like, a trap door in the middle of the ground, and, like, it all started with, like, these Belco doors that you would have to pull open and walk down, like, a huge tunnel, and we both were just like, nah. There's no way that, like, you're enticed by this. Like, that story was all about, like, we read about this online and people say, like, that this thing exists and we know where it is, and it's like, well, then don't go looking for it. Stay far away from it, you know? Like, there's nothing enticing about that situation, and there's nothing enticing about this situation. Even as someone, I vaguely talked about it before on the show, I'm not going to get super into it. Even as someone who has, like, urban explored before in certain developments in certain areas and cities and stuff, like the Divine Lorraine in Philly, like I broke into there once and climbed up like multiple levels. Like there's like rules, you know, like there's rules you should have. And like
Yeah,
one of the
there's
big
a
ones is always knowing how stable or unstable a situation is and always knowing where your exit is. And like those two rules alone would have stopped me from fucking going near this place.
Oh yeah, for sure. I grew up like 200 yards away from this huge abandoned factory in the town that I grew up in. And it was right attached to a pair of railroad tracks that are no longer in use. There's a pair that are, and they're currently used for freight, but there were there's a split line that came off of them to put a bunch of the shit that this place made onto it. I'm going to keep it kind of vague because if I say the name of the place, it'll be very easy to figure out exactly where I grew up. Yeah. But like, I used to go there as a kid. It was the one rule that would have gotten me the belt from my dad. Like, he was like, never go to this place because it's dangerous. And he was totally right. Like, there was so much rusted metal and so much like scaffolding and shit. And like, I was smart enough that I would look at things and go, I'm not going to climb on all of that. But like, it would have been so easy to climb on one of those like wrought iron ladders and just like put my foot through a rung, or like, you know, or like just fall and like get tetanus anywhere. So I was always very, very careful when I went. And also like, I always had my eye towards the exit, you know, like, because other people were frequently there like exploring, and like like homeless people would sometimes live in portions of the factory, and like people would come there to do drugs. So it was like it was not a safe place to be, and my father was right to disallow me from going. But I still went, and like that was enough for me. If any sort
but
of,
you did it the smart way. You knew the right way to go about it. You never pushed your limits. You stayed in your lane.
For sure. And but like the stuff that people do in these stories, I'm like, you just, do you want to die? Like,
you almost deserve this. You invite this, you know, the outcome at that point. Similarly, in the same vein, it's just like I'm the kid who, like, you know, the parents take him to a playground. I'm under 10 years old. What was the area in, like, I want to say like Trexler Town called, where like an entire playground was just made out of wood? Do you remember this?
I do not know this.
Okay. There was this entire playground made out of wood, and it was a sight as a kid, because you would be so like invited, like looking at it, because they had like an almost full scale like pirate ship like made out of wood, sick. And like an almost like to kid scale like full train with like carts, you know. I remember pretending I was like a fucking like Indiana Jones, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, or the Last Crusade, just like jumping on those trains and like running, you know. And like I'm looking at these things, and I'm looking at like the buildings and the tree houses and the slides, and like it was this big like development that totally got torn down by the time we grew up and got older, naturally, because it was you know, riddled with angry insects and mold and just terribly aged. But I was the type of kid who even looked at something like that like anxiously as like an 8-year-old. Sure. Just like, I'm not gonna go into anything. I'm not gonna go inside anything. Like, I didn't even like the tubes at like a play place, like a Chuck E. Cheese or a McDonald's. Like, I didn't even like going into any of those interior like slide tubes or any of that shit. Like, claustrophobia as a kid, like, I don't even know if I want to say as a kid, because I've grown up very like uncomfortable by tight spaces, and like spaces that I can feel my breathing getting tighter just imagining existing in that space. And it's just like, that's something that's always stuck with me. So I'm reading them descending these stairs and entering this small room with this huge figure, and I'm just like, no. I'm just like, no. There's no fucking way I'm even in there. I'm not even in the church. I'm not even looking at the creepy Jesus. I'm not even past another thing, like, the ceiling falls out. From that point forward, the entire thing is unsafe. You don't know the next part of this that's going to give out. What if the floor gave out? What if you fell through and got trapped down there with that thing?
Oh,
you know, like,
the idea that you wouldn't at that point immediately go, all right, how do we get out of this
How do we
place?
get out of here after the ceiling just fucking fell on us and we almost died? Like, why isn't the first question, how do we get out of here now? Because our exit was just blocked. Shouldn't be getting out of this space be the top of our priority list right now?
Nah, Jamie dumb as hell. So, you know, that's
Jamie dead as hell, also
dead
probably
as hell.
true.
Well, or just like never was. It seems like sort of a fate worse than death, just being erased.
Oh, well, that was fun.
That was fun. I'm gonna stake my claim right now before we even read part 2 and 3.
Expectations.
I think that this is like Blade 1. I think this is like Blade 1 and 2.
Blade 1. All right.
I think that parts 2 and 3 are gonna be like Blade 3, where we get a lot of like
shitty expedition characters we didn't ask for.
Just like kind of a lore dump.
Ryan Reynolds.
The time. It's crucially part 2 and 3 are going to have Ryan Reynolds, and it's not going to make any sense.
And a noticeable lack of Jessica Biel. And that time she totally shot that camera operator with like a crossbow or some shit.
That's sick as hell. That is sick. But no, I do think that parts 2 and 3 are going to be like, okay, now I'm going to explain the mechanics of this, and yeah, I'm going to immediately check out. But could also be fun.
Could be fun to check out at that point.
Right.
Because if they start to read the Latin and it starts to actually be a demon and the demon gets to speak, I'm back in.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when I say check out, I just mean like I think it'll have lost some of its artistic value. I do think
you're not wrong.
The place where it's almost the most fun to just pick apart writing, though, is when writers get way too lost in the sauce of trying to closet.
You're not wrong.
And they're like, "Oh, but I gotta have a reason for all this."
Let us answer all of the questions.
Very good. So that's my theory. Maybe it won't be like that. I suspect.
Base level expectations. The demon was a Chekhov's gun. We're absolutely gonna see it again. Because we don't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
The demon is in the room. We don't know who it's going to eat.
Okay. Do we think it has a name? I think it has a name.
I mean, probably.
Like Grimpus or something. Like it's gonna have a good name. I think. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to The Conjuring 2, where they argue that Grimpus, knowing Grimpus's name, has power over him, and therefore they cast him asunder.
Oh man, did you know that in some of the original versions of Rumpelstiltskin, he tears himself in half when you utter his name?
I feel like I did know that, but it's also fun to be reminded.
Like he grabs,
and then he grabbed his ankles and he tore his body in twine.
Yeah, I think he like grabs like hair on both sides of his head, and then he just rips
himself down the middle. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's
which
fun.
I think is kind of awesome.
It's pretty cool. He's a cool guy. Stealing babies and shit.
Go out on your own terms, you know? That's what I say.
That's the message for today. Like,
tear yourself in half. Do trend. Get angry.
The message for today is if you're gonna get lost in the woods, at least find a demon named Grimpus. And if you're not, and you're just upset with life and you're done stealing kids, just rip yourself in half the next time someone says your name.
Absolutely. I can endorse that. I can't wait for Revenge of Grimpus and Grimpus Returns.
Why is this a thing now?
Sorry. I have to name it.
How long were you thinking about that?
I wasn't.
I wasn't. That's the secret, Cap. I wasn't.
Whenever you're making up a name, you have to just sort of let
say it at the top of your head.
Any syllables come out, and then you have to commit to it.
I heard that's how Paul Rudd got stuck with calling Jason Segel Jobin in that one part of I Love You, Man. they wanted to cut, but he just said Jobin, and Jason Segel's natural reaction is like, what? What did you just say? And he's like, I don't know, you called me Pistol and I called you Jobin, I don't know.
I didn't know that, but it makes complete sense. And that was the most memorable part of that entire movie, too. So, he's on to something.
I'm glad we were able to get to the bottom of this together. Thank you for joining me. Oh, I never even said your name. People look at the title card. Fuck it. It's okay. This was Deepwoods, PA, Part 1 with Ramses Vanderslice. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to continue and maybe get deeper into the deep woods to find Grimbus with you once again.
Absolutely. A pleasure as always.